Hi everyone, in my today's session I'm going to demonstrate how to secure API application or any kind of web application using Microsoft Azure app rules or app registration rules. So let's start with it quickly. So I'll go to app registrations, click on new app registration. Let me fill the details. For this demonstration I'm creating a API application registration which is called company-department-API- the environment dev. Okay, click on register. So I have successfully created an app registration. App ID is generated, and then I have the directory or the tenant ID. So let's quickly move on to the API permissions. Sorry, expose an API. First, I need to expose the API, add a URI. Okay, so this is application ID URI. Post that. I will add a scope because in order to expose any API, you should have at least one scope. So that's why even with the demonstration of application roles which I'm going to demonstrate, still this API at least have one scope, that is this default scope which represents the entire API application. View users and administrators key, click on add scope. So that is my default scope for my API application I have added. Okay, now move on to the app roles blade. Okay, over here now we will create roles. In previous video I explained how to secure API using scopes. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how to secure a API application or a microservice using application roles. Okay, so create on an app role, give a meaningful name. So I have given a name here, allowed member types, whether you want only users or groups to access this API using this role application or both. I'm going to select users or groups. Okay, paste the same value over here also, and apply. So that's a role created. Let's create one more role which is for writing. Click on create app role, write, again users and groups. Okay, and apply. Okay, so that's what we are done with creating the app rules also. Okay, now we have to go ahead and create a client application registration, but before that there's one more property we need to tweak here. Go to the manifest. As I have already explained in my previous videos, basically the access token accepted version, make it 2 so that the tokens will be generated according to the version 2 APIs of login.microsoftonline.com, which is basically used for authentication and authorization. Save it. Okay, so that's what we have done. Now I'm registering or creating one more app registration for the client application. So using the same convention, company, department, client, and dev. Okay, accounts in this organization only. Let's select single page application. Okay, and I need to give a redirect URI. So as in the previous video, I had made use of Postman application as my client application. I have not created any React or Angular based application or any desktop based application. Instead, I'm making my Postman itself as a client application to demonstrate this. So Postman is my client application and this app registration is meant for that, and I have specified a callback URL in order to extract our access token once successful authentication and authorization happens. Click on register. Well, that's my client application. I got application ID for my newly created client application. Okay, guys. Now I will go ahead and I need to add API permissions. So what I'm going to do is I will add a permission. Okay, and go to my APIs in my organization. And recently I had created this one, company department API dev, in order to represent my API. Okay, so here let's select the default scope for the API. Okay, so add the permission. Okay, so we have added the default delegated permission basically. Okay, the scope level permission to this API for this particular API. Okay, and the scope has been the delegated permission has been granted to this particular client application. Okay, always remember scope is a mandatory parameter when you want to authorize yourself to any kind of APIs. Okay, there won't be any API which is not having a scope. There must be at least one scope required to authorize yourself to any API application. Okay, so that's why a default scope. Now once this has been done with respect to token configuration, this is an optional step, but still I would like to, yeah, put a highlight on this. Okay, if you want to add additional claims to your access token, I think you people would have seen I have shown the access tokens using the jwt.ems website, where we can decode and see how an authorization access token looks like. Okay, so if you want some additional optional claims, either it is for a token type of ID or is it for access token, you can configure that. So if you want some additional information for ID, see, you can add them by selecting the checkboxes, all the claims over here. Account is meant for users account status in tenant, whether he's active or inactive. The auth context IDs, okay, the authorization time, the country, email, the most important being the IP address, which I have seen a lot because people prefer to take the user's IP address in the token so that they can implement the same user in order to prevent the same user sessions on multiple devices. I think that is one good example where you can configure your additional claims. So using this IP address, basically, you can allow a user to access your application on only one machine on one browser session so that the same application can't be opened on multiple devices. Okay. So the session is stick to IP address basically. Okay. So that you can do by adding over here. Okay, and the same you can do for access token also. In case of access token, one such example is ID type. Okay, this particular claim will tell you that signals whether the token is an app only token, whatever access token you generate, whether it is a user token or whether it is an application only token, that you can easily identify using this token type. Okay, this particular claim ID type. Well, I'm not going to use it for now. Just for demonstration purpose I have shown you. If you want, you can include them. Okay, well, that's it. Let's move on to app roles blade. Here you are not required to do anything because rules have been configured at the API side. It's the API application which decides a user having what role can access its endpoints. So from the client application side, I'm not giving any app rules. Okay, again I'll go to manifest and I will make access token accepted version to 2. Okay, so with this, I have completed with my configuration associated on the cloud for my both applications. One is the API application and one is the client application basically. Okay. Now I'm going to start with the code side. Configuration part has been done on the cloud. Now I will start with the code side. First, I will create a web API project because my API is a web API. It's a service project. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I will create, yeah, I will create a web API project in .NET. Okay, using this command .NET new web API, name being this, and a hyphen hyphen auth equal to single auth, as already explained. All required Microsoft.identity.web related libraries and the required initial startup code or the configuration code to enable authentication and authorization will be injected by this particular template automatically. Okay, so I will hit enter. So my project created successfully. So as you can see, the code has been automatically injected into the program.cs in order to add authentication and configure Microsoft Identity Web API based on authentication and authorization. Okay. This has been added. One more call I need to add, which is before use authorization. So what I'm going to do is over here after use authentication, a required call. Okay. Save it. This has been done. Now I will go to app settings.json and I have to add the app IDs basically of my API project. Okay. So I need to insert the client ID over here, and where will I get my client ID? I will go to app registrations over here. Yeah. the company department API dev. Here I will go on overview blade. I will extract this client ID, copy it, and paste it into the configuration section. Okay, and then I have already inserted the required roles which I had created on this API application. So if you go to app roles, can you see these are the two application roles I had created, weather.write, weather.read. The same has been put into this configuration section. Okay. So this entire Azure AD section was automatically inserted by the project template itself. Only thing which I have changed is addition of these two settings. Okay, in order to configure the roles in my API controller. Okay, so these are the two roles I have created, one for just reading purpose, one for writing purpose, and this is the newly generated client ID which is coming over here. Okay, now let's move on to the code side. There's the API code side, controller level. And before that, okay, one more piece of information which I have already explained in my previous videos. The instance will be https://login.microsoftonline.com itself. This is the website where you are going to basically authenticate and authorize yourself, and domain being your default directory domain. Can you see over here? Okay, so in the tooltip domain, it is showing my domain name, okay, which I had created when I created this portal, this account in Azure portal basically. Okay, so you can make use of the same over here, which I have already shown in previous videos. And let's move on to the weather forecast controller. Okay, for the sake of time saving, I have already added the required code. Can you see? This time I have put the required scope attribute at the controller level only. So my expectation is that, okay, in order to access any endpoint of this API, you should have a default scope. Okay. Then secondary point being, you should be authorizing yourself to each and every endpoint. So in order to read the data, you should have the role now. Okay. So when I was demonstrating scope based, securing your web API using app registration scopes, we made use of this required scope attribute on our action methods, okay, or the controller level, basically the controller class level. But now here, what I have done is for each and every action method, I have specified the authorized attributes and also I have specified the role. In order to access this get endpoint, you should have weather.read, okay, role available on your access token. Okay, same way, in order to put some data or post some data, you should have this particular role, that is weather.write. Okay, so if the incoming access token contains these two values under its roles claim, okay, then only the token can perform get as well as post operation. If it contains just read, only read is possible. If it is write, then post is possible. Okay, so this is the code side configuration, very simple. Okay, easy to understand. Now move on to the Postman side now. Okay, yeah, from the Postman side, go to the authorization tab. Do remember, Postman is my client application. Okay, it's your front end application. In this scenario, Postman is my front end application. Okay, first I want to perform a get operation, so on my API weather forecast. Okay, so this is the URL, okay, which is available for me when I run my application. So if I come over here and if I do a .NET run, let's see what port will be available. Yeah, the application is successfully up and running, and for the HTTPS I got the localhost colon 7093, which is good. The same I have configured over here. So I have put the endpoint URL over here. Okay, and apart from that, for the token configuration, I need to select from the type, I need to select OAuth 2.0. Okay, add authorization data to request headers, which is correct. Okay, and then go on, provide a meaningful token name, grant type. Now here I am selecting implicit. Okay, in previous videos I shown using authorization code. Okay, now I'm making use of implicit grant type in order to demonstrate these app rules. Okay, so I have selected implicit callback URL. This is the same URL which I have already configured with my client application. So if I go over here and if I go to authentication, you would see the same URL. Okay, this is a redirect URI, you would say basically, or reply URLs where the token will be returned. Okay, so that's it. And then authorization URL, again same. From this particular endpoint in the overview blade endpoint, first of all we need the authorization URL, which will be populated here. So this will be the authorization endpoint, so which I have put over here. Okay, so that is sufficient. With the implicit flow, I have to put just the authorization URL that I have put. Okay, and then client ID, I took the client ID from the overviews blade, which is over here. This is the client ID. Okay, and then scope, this should be your API scope basically, so that we will fill now. So go to the app registrations, and this is my com department API dev uh, app registration. From here I will go to the expose an API, copy the default scope from here and paste it over here. Okay, so that's the setup required. Client authentication, send as basic auth header. Okay, keep it as it is. So this is the setup required, guys, basically. Okay, so now we will verify whether we will be able to hit the endpoint or not. So let's try to generate a token. Okay, so I will come over here. Okay, there is an error basically. Let's check what it is. Error description. Response type token is not enabled for the application. Yes, so here we have missed a step, guys, so let me correct that. Okay, so here we need to go to the client application. So this is the client application registration, and under authentication I have not enabled. Okay, what kind of token should be there? Okay, in my after successfully authenticating and authorizing, so there should be some token, right? So I have to select both access token and ID token, then only the server will return the token. If both of these are not selected, then that's what we were resulted in an error. Okay, the server returned an error response saying that both the tokens are not enabled. Okay, so let me save this. Okay, now for the client application I have enabled both ID token, access tokens, so now I should be able to get a token. So clear cookies and get access token. So after correcting that, so now basically I am able to log in over here, and it is requesting for the consents. Okay, so permissions requested one of two, that is com, that is my company hyphen department hyphen client application. So this app would like to access the default scope, basically access this particular API com department API application with the default scope, view your basic profile, maintain access to data you have given it access to. Okay, say next. Okay, I'm giving the consent, and also there is one more permission requested, that is same as the previous one. Okay, on this API application basically, so say accept. So I think this should generate the token. So token has been successfully generated, the access token over here, can you see in the URL? So just we need to extract that. So authentication complete, proceed, use the token. So let me do a get request now. Okay, so 403 forbidden. Okay, now I will explain you why I got this particular 403 forbidden error. Okay, and the user I used to log in also plays an important role. So let's go to the Azure portal. Okay, now we are making use of app roles. Okay, guys, now we are making use of this particular app roles. So this roles needs to be assigned to my organization users. Okay, then only my users will be able to access this particular API. So in this particular case, if you see, my setup is working properly. Okay, I was able to authenticate successfully, but when the time came to access the API, I had been written 403 forbidden. Reason being, none of my organization user have access to those app roles which I had created, these ones, weather.write and weather.read. Okay, now how to do that, I'm going to show you. So in order to assign users to these roles, go to the home. Okay, under here Microsoft Enter ID. Okay, and open Enterprise Applications Blade over here. Okay, so now here we need to do the configuration basically. So select the company's API application that is over here. Okay, now you have to do the user assignment. So assign users and groups. Can you see, for this particular API application, no users have been assigned and the result is easily reflected over here. Okay, it is directly visible to us. 403 forbidden error in spite of a user has been successfully authenticated. This is the power of application rules, guys. Okay, in previous sessions, I shown you the power of scopes. Okay, now I'm demonstrating the power of application rules, because none of my user has been assigned to these created roles. That's why there are no roles. Basically, no users have been assigned any role. That's why I'm not able to get the API response. So let me do the role assignment for my users. So add user or group, click on this. Okay, so here for this particular hypothetical user which I had created in my directory, okay, I am going to select this particular user and I am going to make a role assignment. Can you see the roles, guys? For this API application, it has listed two roles, weather.read, weather.write. Okay, now it's the decision of your administrator, okay, who basically manages this API application. In real world scenarios, you may encounter many such scenarios where you have to decide what kind of role you want to assign to your user. So in my case, I want this particular user whom I selected, I want him only read the weather data. Okay, I'm not going to provide him weather.write permission. So he won't be able to write any weather related data in my database. He can only read it. So I have selected only one, select and assign. Can you see Ansh Ghosh, object type user, has the role assigned weather.read. Now let's regenerate the token once again, clear the cookies. Okay, let's regenerate the token once again and we will see by hitting the API once again. So I logged in user with user Ansh Ghosh. Okay, token has been generated. So now I'm going to verify whether I'm able to get the response or not. Can you see, guys? Okay. The moment I made a user assignment to this role, that is weather.read, now this user is able to access my API. Okay. So API returned 200 OK, which is a success, and I got the weather data. So basically, I'm able to read the data. Can you see the method HTTP GET? And if you go to the code level, see, this is a HTTP GET method basically. Okay, this action endpoint can be accessed with HTTP GET, and the user should be an authenticated user and he has to authorize with the role weather.read. So if I extract this particular token and verify, in if I decode this token and verify, I should see that weather.read set on that particular user. So I'll copy this. Okay, and open the decoder website, that is jwt.ms. Enter the token. So this is the decoded token. User is Ansh Ghosh. And can you see the roles collection in scope based? Okay, when securing a web API using a scope based approach, we used to see the various scopes coming in scope claim, that is SCP claim. Now see, the roles claim is coming into picture, and this roles claim basically contains only one value, that is weather.read for user Ansh Ghosh. So that's why, as per the code, Ansh.Ghosh has weather.read role assigned to him on the okay, assigned to him, and as per the code side, he can basically access this endpoint which can read the weather data with this role assigned. Okay, so that's why the user is able to read the weather data. But if you try to perform this weather.write, again he will be written with 403 forbidden error, because when you see the claim, okay, the claim whatever we generated or the role assignment whatever we did for Ansh.Ghosh, it doesn't contain weather.write. Okay, and that's why when he successfully authenticates and authorizes, the token he receives does not contain weather.write, and the API will basically fail the request and it will return 403 error. Okay, let's verify that also. So what I will do is make it post. Okay, now send 403 forbidden. Got it, guys? So that's the power of application rules. Okay, you create application rules at your API level application. Okay, at your API level application, and then you decide what user to access your API in what particular mode, whether he can only read the data, whether you want to provide him only the read access, write access, both. It's up to you as administrator, you have to decide that. Okay, so that is an example with this user. So I will add one more user. I will select myself in this scenario. Okay, select, and now role, I will select both read. Okay, it is allowing only one at a time. So I have selected weather.write. So select it. Okay, and assign. So my user has weather.write permission. Okay, so when I perform a post request to my endpoint in order to add some data, I should succeed. But meanwhile, if I try to perform a read operation, I will get a 403 error because I have not assigned myself weather.read. Okay, so if I select this once again, let me select my user only. Okay, select it, and I will add weather.read also so that I can demonstrate both the types. Okay, a user having both permissions. So in my case, I have both write and read, so I should succeed in both the operations. Okay, I already shown you just having one role assigned, what will happen. The role assigned, you will able to perform that action. Basically, if I go to my code level with weather.read, the Ansh.Ghosh user was able to perform a read operation, but he failed to perform a write operation. But with my user, I will be able to perform both. So let's try with my user now. Get new access token. So this time I won't select this user, I'm selecting myself. Okay, so it is asking me to enter password. So once again, as I'm a new user logging into this particular client application, again, it is asking for the permissions or the consents. Okay, permission one of two, which is for the API default and others to view basic profile and all those stuffs. Okay, and then the requested permission two. Okay, on the API application. So I will accept it. So token has been successfully created. I can see in the browser URL itself, it's coming with this access token. So open it in the Postman, authentication complete, proceed, use the token newly generated. And now I will do a post operation. Previously it failed, now it should succeed. So let's verify. Yes, 200 okay, success. Now if you verify the token for my user, as I have both the permissions set, I will be able to see both the rows available in this particular decoded token. So paste it over here. Now it's my user, and if you see the roles claim, basically the roles claim basically contains a collection which has both weather.read, weather.write. Okay, and when you go to the, yeah, the Azure portal also. Okay, under enterprise applications, as you remember, I had made assignment of both the roles for my user, and that's why I'm able to perform both operations. The post has succeeded. If I change to get method and perform, I'm able to read the data also as per my code. Okay, because my token contains both weather.read as well as weather.write roles. That's why I'm able to perform both operations. So this is how you basically secure your web APIs or services using Azure provided app registration app rules. Okay, this is the second approach which you can basically make use of, and this is the most preferred approach most of the times. Okay, so scopes basically help you to protect your entire web API by providing access to some part of your API. Okay, basically scopes various parts of your web API. So which part you want to give to a client application. But when it comes to app roles are directly associated with the users. Okay, and here you will decide basically for what user, what operation you want to allow. This is purely a role based access control scenario, guys. Okay, so that's all from my side. I hope you people understood how to implement this application rules for your web APIs in order to secure them using this Microsoft's identity platform. Okay, so thank you for listening and have a nice day, guys.